you so much for joining us this morning for One Stop College Admissions. My name is Rebecca Jung, and I'm the Teen Services Librarian here at the Bell Tib Library. I've been here doing teen services for 15 years. I've worked with one of our presenters for most of those years, actually, for a long time. And I serve middle and high school students. Sometimes both middle and high school students might attend programs together or separately. And we've been doing college admissions support for a long time, and I have a lot of sympathy for parents. I'm a parent of a senior in high school myself, and I know how confusing all the information out there can be. There's an overabundance of information and probably some misinformation, and then things change over time as well. I have actually personally and professionally worked with both of our presenters. But my daughter, who's a senior, has gone through the college admissions application process and is now on the other side. And she gained a lot of confidence and support from our presenters. And as a parent, I was very grateful that they took the burden off of me and really helped her through this process and helped us both understand what's going on in all the facets of college admissions and applications. So I want to let everyone know we will be recording. I'm going to hit recordings pause right now. I should have already started it, but I will start as soon as I'm done with my introduction. And the recording and the slides will be available to share afterwards. What we're going to do is start with our first presenter, Michelle Baird from Samara College Advising, who has a great deal of experience working with students, over a decade of experience in this community. And there will be a little Q&A after her session, and then we'll go on to our second presenter, Adam Piacente from Marin SAT Prep, who has worked with hundreds and hundreds of students for about 20 years, specifically on standardized testing. So I'm going to go ahead and hit record, and we will get started.
All right, and I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. So just give me a moment to get my slides up and going. And let me go ahead and hit my slideshow here. All right, and is everyone able to see everything okay? Perfect. So thank you so much, Rebecca, for the introduction. It's great to be here today. My name is Michelle Baird, and I have been college counseling for several years. I got my certificate in college counseling from UCLA Extension and have counseled within the school setting as well as working independently, which is what I do now. I work primarily with students from the Bay Area, although I do work with students from around different regions of the country. And my background is as a former educator. I spent well over a decade in the classroom as a full-time high school history and English teacher. So I'm very focused on growth, very focused on this very unique transition that is happening as students make this huge, very exciting transition from being at home, being in their high school context, and then getting ready to leave home and going to college. So that is all really exciting and rewarding and why I enjoy my work. And so I'm going to start in terms of my presentation. We're going to talk a little bit about what colleges are looking for when they actually sit down and look at a student's application. I'm going to walk through the different pieces of the application process. And also the college counseling process. So you sort of like know when you're going through this college process, what are the major steps? What are the transitions? What is the timeline? What are the things to expect? I know from the outside it can sometimes feel a little bit overwhelming, and I'm here to say you don't have to be overwhelmed. It's actually a very step-by-step process that you can follow. And then I'll take any sort of questions for a couple of minutes right after my presentation before we go into Adam's presentation, who's going to get a little bit more into the nitty-gritty of what testing actually looks like in this day and age. So big thing to keep in mind that when college admissions officers sit down and they read college applications from seniors in the fall or the winter of their senior year, when they sit and look at those applications and are trying to make decisions about whether they're going to admit that student into their class or whether they're not going to admit that student into their class, they're reading those application files holistically. So what this means is that when college admissions officers are really sitting down and looking at your child's application, they're not looking for any one particular thing. They're looking to get a good sense of your child holistically from a lot of different pieces and parts. So there's no one part of that application that is going to get a student into a school, and there's also no one part of that application that is going to prevent a student from being accepted at a school. So I just want to sort of start with the sense that this whole college process is about developing a holistic sense of your student and who they really are and as sort of how they'll present. So when colleges actually sit and look at an application, they're looking at a variety of different things. Which I've listed here, and each college looks at them a little bit differently. They'll rank them in a different order, but these are the things in general that they're looking for. So at the top of the list is obviously student grades and GPA. So colleges are sitting down and really looking at a student's transcript. They have a sense for what those courses are that a student's taken and how they actually did. They also look at students within the context of their high school. So colleges and universities have a very good sense for each of the high schools that students are applying for, what sort of coursework is offered, what opportunities there are for students there. And they're looking to see that students have good, solid grades in their coursework. They're also looking to see that the rigor of the coursework is there. So if your student has an opportunity to take rigorous courses, is your student actually taking those courses and how are they doing in those courses? It is okay, and colleges look that a student is taking more rigorous coursework and may have slightly lower grades in those rigorous courses. That's fine. They want to see that students are really challenging themselves to the best of their ability. One of the other things that schools are looking for is extracurricular activities. So these are all the things that students get up to outside of the classroom. Are they doing performing or visual arts? Are they doing sports? Are they volunteering? Are they working? How is a student spending its time outside of the classroom? A student may spend a significant amount of their time helping at home, whether that's working with older relatives, taking care of younger relatives, driving siblings around. All of those things are important pieces that colleges are looking for. So they're really looking for students to be involved academically. They're looking for students to be involved outside of the classroom as well. One of the biggest pieces that colleges and universities are looking for is a compelling student narrative. So they want to have a good sense of who a student is and sort of what activities, what courses they've taken that sort of make sense in terms of that student's journey and their sort of narrative. So part of the things that colleges are going to look at is personal essays or supplemental essays. They're also going to be looking at teacher recommendations and reading those very closely, counselor recommendations. So there's a lot of different pieces that they're going to look at to really get a sense for who the student actually is. Test scores are also a piece that they're going to be looking at. Not all schools require test scores. Some schools are test optional. However, we are seeing more and more schools moving towards looking at testing. And this is something that Adam will be talking about a little bit more in his presentation. I always have students each year who choose not to test for a variety of different reasons. They may have a learning difference, they may have other reasons why they don't want to test. However, most of my students do test, and those test scores are helpful, particularly in terms of like finding scholarships or financial aid. Sometimes test scores are required for that. It can also be a helpful piece of the puzzle to present to colleges as they're applying. Colleges are also looking for a student's alignment with coursework for their potential major. You don't necessarily need to know what it is that you're going to major in college. You can go in and declare that's fine. But colleges want to see that a student has really thought about, okay, how are they prepared for college coursework? How have they positioned themselves Are they mature enough and ready? And if a student does have a particular area that they want to go into, say they're applying into a business school, or they're very interested in a particular STEM subject, or they're applying to a particular sort of program within a college, they want to see that the student can make a compelling case for what that potential major might actually be, or that they're ready, if they're undeclared, to go into college coursework. And finally, and this is the part that is a little bit hard to predict, is that the student's application needs to fit within the institutional priorities of that college or university. So each college or university is looking for something that's a little bit different, and that can change from year to year, particularly with schools that are highly selective, that have low admissions rates. It is very difficult to predict what they are looking for in a given year. In a given year, they may need a football player who can contribute to their theater program, and that's what they're looking to admit. In another year, that might be someone who plays the oboe and can become a French major at that school. So, the best thing to sort of keep in mind is that students create a compelling narrative of themselves. They really get a sense for who they are. They develop a list of schools, right, where it feels like they're going to be a really good fit. Then they put themselves out there and see. So if a student is not accepted into a school, that has nothing to do with the student's capability. That often has a lot to do with what the institution's priorities were for a given year and whether that student fits in that little box or not. So, part of the college process is really figuring out who the student is, developing a really compelling narrative, and then finding as many colleges and universities as possible where they would potentially be a really good fit, that you can sort of like send out those applications to those schools and see where that synergy actually happens, where the student and the way that they're presenting really matches with what an institution is looking for. All right, so the purpose of the college process to keep in mind, and I tend to be very growth oriented as an educator, is that students really want to develop a sense of themselves and what they want for the future. So as students are going through the college process, they're going to do a lot of exploration. What is possible for me? What opportunities are out there? What could I potentially do that I haven't necessarily thought about, right? And how does my sense of myself fit into that exploration? So students really get a chance to really think about who they are and where they want to be. Students also develop an understanding of the best fit schools for themselves. Just because a school is number one on a particular list does not mean that that is the best school for the student, right? A student needs to go to an institution where the institution is going to recognize and match them and support them, right? So, really getting a sense for where are the best colleges for me, for the things that I'm looking for, the type of students that I want to be with, the professors who teach the way that I want them to teach, and the sorts of things that I want to study. So, really developing that sense of where's the best place for me. Students also develop the skills, tools, and resources that they need to be successful in college and beyond. There's a lot of soft skill development that happens throughout the college process, whether that's deepening research skills, like learning how to articulate yourself a little bit better in writing, really sort of digging into who you are. A lot of what I do with students is simply like, how do you write an email to an adult, particularly like an admissions officer at a college that you would like to go to? Like, there's some pieces of this that students really learn to develop agency, sense of self, sense of voice, communication skills that are really important. All right, so if we're breaking the college process down into its basic components, it follows or tracks in this particular way. So the first part is academic and activity development, and this tends to happen through the first part of high school. So really thinking about what are the academic courses that students are taking, planning so that students are taking rigorous courses in areas that are really of interest to them. If the student's particularly interested in STEM, maybe thinking about focusing a bit more on STEM courses. If a student really loves humanities, really thinking about going in that direction. Overall, academically, what colleges are looking for is balance. So they want to see that students are taking a lot of different courses in a lot of different areas and that they are actually sort of following and sort of matching all those pieces of the core curriculum, and that they are also within that, while doing that, that they are developing specific interests and aptitudes in particular coursework. Another piece is really activity development. And so this is all the stuff that students do outside of the classroom. So maybe this is athletics, maybe this is interning, maybe this is getting a job. This can be a variety of different things, joining a club, leading a club, and really trying out a lot of different things. When I'm working with students, one of the things that I tell them is that it's really important to try a lot of things and find out what it is that you don't like. Because learning what you don't like can be as important as figuring out what it is that you do like, right? That it's very important to try something and say, whoa, that is not for me. That can help really guide your process as it happens. So, this academic and activity development is also a lot about trying things on to see sort of what sticks. And also trying some things that are a little bit out of your comfort zone to see if that opens up some possibilities for you that you hadn't necessarily thought about before. The second part is the college research and application list building. So this is when you actually like sit down and start figuring out, okay, I've heard about this school. What actually is going on at that school? Are the topics offered that I want to study actually at that school? And actually sort of learning about, okay, if I were to put myself on this campus, what would it look like? What would my experience be? And is that something that I'm interested in doing? Um, Part of this can happen in the junior year. Also know that like I have seniors who will show up in September and be like, okay, I'm ready to start, right? And so it is okay to start the process a little bit later when you're ready to actually be like, okay, I want to explore schools. I want to figure out what's right for me. I want to figure out what's not right for me. And then develop an application list. So really thinking about applying to a variety of different schools that are all a good match for the student that have different admissions rates, right? So when you're actually thinking about a list of schools to apply to, you want to think about some schools that are going to be a reach for the student, that they have a lower chance of actually getting accepted to. You want a lot of schools where the student is going to be a really good match, like 50-50 chance of admission, where they're a really good match. And you also want several schools, right? 3, 4, where the student has a very likely chance of admission, right? So where a student of this of yours, like your child would definitely be admitted. You want to run through that process so at the end you have choices. It's not just like I've thrown all my birds I've sort of like put all of my eggs. Oh man, I am mangling my metaphors. That's okay though. I put all my eggs in baskets where it's really hard to get into, right? And seeing what happens. You want to make sure that you've got eggs in a lot of different baskets of a lot of different possibilities. So at the end, you can sit down and make the choice that's best for you. You get into the personal essay and application writing development, usually starting summer of the junior year, but honestly, a lot of seniors go through a lot of growth and development in the fall of their senior year as well. And as they go through the writing process of actually writing the personal essay that they're going to send to colleges or working on different pieces of application writing, sometimes it takes, September, October, early November of the senior year to really flesh out that personal sense of voice and purpose. So that can be a long process, but it's definitely an important process. It is something that you want to start early. You don't want to wait until like the night before an application to actually start that writing process, but it is something that evolves over time. And then the last piece is application submission and offer review. And these are two pieces, right? So often those applications will actually go in the fall and the winter of senior year and sort of following a very basic timeline and knowing, okay, in order to get these applications done by these particular deadlines, I'm going to take it piece by piece. It is very possible to take it piece by piece and not be overwhelmed by the application process. There's a little bit of a lull, usually, after those applications go in. And this is a really important time for seniors to refocus on, okay, I'm going to refocus on my classes, my friends, my activities, my sleep, all the things that I'm going to catch up with, right, while I was going through the actual application process. And then those offers of admission come in, and you want an opportunity to actually sit and think and review those offers of admission. Really critically, this is a point at which students could potentially go back and visit schools if they're like, okay, I was admitted to these 2 or 3 schools and I'm not sure which one of these I actually want to go to. Sometimes going back at that point and actually visiting campus can really help a student determine what that choice actually is. All right, so the next slide that I've got is a little bit more of a nitty-gritty timeline where I've sort of broken down each year what it is that you're doing. So I'm going to sort of walk you through this. I know it's a little bit of a lot of information. But ninth and 10th grade year is really about academic advising. So, really thinking about academics and developing good study skills, making sure that you're doing well in your classes, you're adjusted well to high school. There's a transition to the freshman year that takes a while to sort of sort out and get comfortable. And there's also a transition that happens in fall of sophomore year as well. Coursework changes, teachers' expectations get a little bit more serious, right? Students are expected to perform at a higher level. So, making sure that students are making those transitions and developing their academic skills and allowing the time that they need to really grow as an academic, as a student in the classroom is really important. Activity development is also really important in that ninth and 10th grade year. Go join a club that you're interested in. Try volunteering somewhere. Maybe think about developing a dog walking business. If you're involved in athletics, really sort of sinking into that. If you're really into visual arts, really starting to work on your skills in particular different areas. So just sort of like deepening that experience with those particular activities. And then the biggest thing, and I put a little exclamation point here, is exploring new things and experiences. Just because you think that you want to go to law school or medical school, or you want to go get an MBA in business or whatever it may happen to be, don't just like put yourself in a little box, right? Explore new things, try new things. This is the point where failure is important, or finding out things that you don't like, so you know that you can look in other areas. 11th grade year is definitely a year where the academics step up. I think everybody's sort of aware of this. This is also the year that primarily when colleges look at transcripts of students, they are looking at the junior year, particularly if students are applying early, so like early in the fall to schools in their senior year. The transcript that the college admissions officers will actually have and be looking at is the junior transcript. So prioritizing academics during this year is particularly important. This is also the time when college representatives come from all over the country and visit local high schools. And if you have a senior who has, or if you have a junior who did not go to any college rep visits this year, don't worry, all the reps come back senior year as well. So they are there for you. But this is a time to really go and sit in as all these college reps, like land in your high school and give 20-minute presentations about their particular college or university, and then ask an opportunity to ask questions. You can expose yourself really quickly to a lot of different schools. You can make connections with college reps. You can email follow up and like start to build a relationship with them. And this is a really good opportunity to go to a school's presentation that you've never heard of before, or a school that you've heard of but don't know anything about. This is a great free way to learn a lot about a lot of different schools quickly. This is also a good time to start virtual or in-person campus tours. You do not have to fly all over the United States to visit a whole bunch of different campuses. There are virtual tours for campuses. If you just Google the name of a campus and virtual tour, you can get on, you can find a video, you can get on. Oftentimes there's very cool 3D little tours that you can take around campus and learn more about them. If you do visit in person, you can go and sign up for tours. It's also totally fine to visit schools that are local to find out a little bit more about what a school is like or what a size of a campus is like. So if you're interested in a really big campus and what that feels like, go visit UC Davis and see how that feels to you. You may not actually want to go to UC Davis, but being on campus, going on a tour, walking around, checking out the students will give you a sense for what a really big school actually looks like. If you're interested in a smaller school, you could go to Dominican University, right? Walk around, take a tour. That doesn't necessarily mean that you want to go to these schools, although you may, and they're both great schools that are good for a lot of different things. But that can give you a sense for, oh, that's too small, that's too big. I like a school more near an urban environment. I need something rural, right? So that's a really good, easy way to start feeling that out. This is when college test list building starts happening. So starting to research those schools and learning more about them. And then also test preparation. I'll let Adam talk a little bit more about that, but that definitely factors in at this time period. Summer after 11th grade is when the personal essay is generally written. I usually counsel students to have a good rough draft of their personal essay by the time they go into their senior year. However, for some students, that happens in the fall of their senior year when they're really ready, and that is totally fine. September and October for seniors really looks like starting to get applications together, starting to write supplemental essays, starting to get the pieces of everything that they need together, and sort of continuing that test prep if a student is testing. A note for parents, if you're interested in financial aid, the CSS profile and the FAFSA open in early October. And so the CSS profile is financial information, usually based on tax returns, that's used by private universities and colleges to figure financial aid packages. So they are going to ask you to file that CSS profile so they can figure financial aid for you. That opens in October. And then FAFSA is federal financial aid for students. That usually opens October 1st. So any final award of financial aid will happen through FAFSA. So you want to make sure that you're filing that as well. And if a student is applying early, right, so that means they apply early to a school so they can hear some earlier news back. Early applications are generally due November 1st through November 15th. So it's just sort of good to keep planning in your mind that like September and October has a lot to do with getting those early applications ready. I generally suggest that students don't apply early to all of the schools on their list that they're going to apply to. That can be a lot of work all at once. But one of the things that I do say is, hey, maybe pick 4 or 5 schools that you like that offer you the opportunity to apply early to so you can get some early news back from them so you can sort of start to plan the rest of your applications. So you're aware the University of California and California State University applications are usually due right at the end of November, the very beginning of December. That date moves around a little bit depending on the year. Sometimes it's November 30th, sometimes it's December 1st. But once students sort of get through their early applications, they will then apply to the UCs and the CSUs. And then everyone goes home, has a good winter break, sort of recalibrates everything it is that they're doing. And then regular decision applications are due January 1st through January 15th. So this is sort of the last big sort of push in terms of the applications. And results come back from those schools, depending on the school. It all kind of comes back at different times. By April, your student will have heard back from all of their colleges and universities they applied to and will have a decision from each one of them. And also, all financial aid offers will be in April, so you can look at them and compare them. And then the deadline for enrollment in terms of doing enrollment decisions. So you have to choose one school that you're going to actually enroll at, and then you'll have to pay a matriculation deposit to that one particular school. That's due May 1st. So students have a long time to actually make these decisions and run through this process. Um, and so one of the important things to keep in mind as we run through all of this is that college process can feel a little bit overwhelming, but it's important to know that there is no one school that is right for every single student. Each student has multiple colleges where they will thrive. And a lot of the college process is about figuring out where that actually is, where those schools are, where your child has a good chance to actually thrive. And that high school students successfully navigate the college process each year. It definitely happens, right? It is a rite of passage, and people navigate it successfully each year. And that this is about growth. It's really an opportunity for students to learn more about who they are, to develop a sense for themselves in the world and who they want to be in that world, and to participate in creating their own future. And I'm going to, excuse me, I'm going to share my email here and I'll share it again at the end. And I'm going to escape really quickly and ask if anyone has questions that they would like to ask.
Hi, Michelle. I do have a couple of questions. It's just mostly logistics since we're just starting this process. Um, you said we don't start visiting schools until junior year. May, do we maybe go do some more local tours before then? There's so many schools out there. I just don't even know how to offer this list of schools, a wide variety of schools for them because I think of a few schools in the area that are, terrific schools, but there's so many. So how do we find out about them, I guess?
Absolutely, that's a great question. Um, and you can sort of do a lot of different things. I have some students who don't do a ton of traveling because it's expensive, right?
Sure.
And I also have students who do a lot of traveling to see a lot of different schools. It just sort of depends on your family and your particular situation. One of the good things to do is that when you are traveling or you have an adult in your family who's traveling, um, and you're going to a particular location, take your child with you and take them to a local campus nearby where you're going, right? So if you're going to Boston for a family wedding, make sure that you schedule a couple of tours. Or if you happen to be going to San Diego for work, see if you can bring your student along and visit a couple of campuses. So you can actually sort of spread it out over a couple of years so it doesn't feel like you have to go see a whole bunch of schools all at once. Um, some students will take spring break of junior year and they will travel and they will see a whole bunch of campuses. I would suggest not seeing more than two campuses a day, though, because they start to run together for students. They don't have a real good recall of much other than the weather at
Right.
that point. It's also important that as you're traveling to make sure that you're taking your student to a wide variety of different schools. So let's say that you're going to Boston, make sure that you're going to some schools that have low admissions rates where it would be challenging for the student to actually get accepted there. Make sure that you're going to schools that also have different acceptance rates that are more generous, right? And particularly some of those schools that have very generous acceptance rates. You want your child or your student to get a sense for what all of these things actually are. I know that some parents will take their student to see a lot of schools, and every single one of them has an admissions rate under 10%, which is really challenging because then the students come to me and they're like, oh, how in the world am I going to do this? And it's like, we don't just want those students to apply to highly, highly selective schools. We want a range. So
Along those, oh,
go
let,
ahead.
sorry to interrupt you. So along those same lines, we don't always know of all those different schools, and so we can go online and look a little bit at different schools, but it seems like the glossy brochure. You don't really know what you're getting, and so maybe you can recommend a book that would be a little bit more non-biased, that would like compare them in similar areas, because I think a lot of schools when I look are highlighting their great things, but I'm not even asking the other questions when I'm looking at a school I've never heard of. And
Right.
maybe a book would offer some, comparisons that are, on the same line. So
Yeah. Okay.
a little
So
more
I'm
non-biased.
All right, I'm gonna take off my earphones and go
That's
to
right.
my bookshelf and
Oh,
bring a
geez.
couple of books back. So fear not. Hold on.
Okay. Thanks.
And I'll just chime in while Michelle's doing that,
Oh,
just to
yeah.
say a lot of these books are available in the library system. I mean, a lot of different
Yes.
college guides. I can't personally recommend one over another, but if you were to go online to our catalog and browse or come in and browse, there are a lot of college guides that are timely. You know, they come out every year, they're annuals, and they compare all the colleges. And also, once your student is probably once they're a junior, the colleges know you're out there. You will start getting postcards from every college in the
Oh, really?
universe.
Okay.
Yeah, it's true.
Well,
Actually, yeah, Rebecca, you're totally like the person to answer this
right.
question because Rebecca has all the resources, right? In terms of a place to start, this is a big kind of intimidating book, but it has a lot of information. This
Okay.
guide to colleges, I'm going to hold it up for you here. This is an old version. I need to get myself an updated version, but this
Okay.
is what was close. This is going to break down a lot of different schools. It'll do it by region, which is really helpful. So you can just sort of go and look and see what's there. It also will give you admissions rates, and it gives you usually like a two-page overview of each school. So you can sort of peruse it pretty quickly and figure out what's going on and what schools are in the particular area. Another one that's really good that I use is the College Finder. Choose a school that's right for you. And what this does, particularly if you know that you have a student who's interested in studying something in particular, or, I'm just sort of opening up like here it is, colleges that have many kosher meal plan options, Lutheran colleges and universities. Like if there's a particular thing that you're interested in looking for, colleges with excellent career counseling, it will give you lists. So if you know that there's something that your student is particularly interested in, it'll break down the best schools in that area. So there's so many resources, but those are two good places to start.
That's great. That was exactly what I was looking for.
Okay, good.
And then I had another question. I've heard people talk about early admissions and early decision and all that stuff. And then you said that the UC and CSU apps are due in November. Is that an early admission or is that just a regular admission?
That's just a regular admission. So I'm going to break down just a couple of little pieces of terminology. You can get like super jargony really quickly when you get into college admissions, as I'm sure you're aware because you hear particularly like parents of seniors start saying lots of things. So early decision a student would apply early decision, and that decision is binding. So a student, if they wanted to, would choose exactly one school that they would apply to early decision. And if they are accepted at that school, that is binding, which means that they're going to go. And some students will do early decision if they can actually decide on one place where they're really sure that they would be really happy. A lot of students don't do early decision because they may need more financial aid options. They may need to look at a lot of offers from a lot of different schools. I also have a number of seniors who just aren't ready by November 1st to commit to exactly one place. Like they need more time and they have more good options, right? So they may not do early decision. Early action is applying early, usually in that November 1st to November 15th window. You receive early news back, but that is not binding, right? So it
Mm-hmm.
usually makes sense to apply to a couple of schools that your child really likes early and then wait to hear what that news is. But you have until May 1st to make that decision. It can just be helpful to have some news early in the process so you know how to actually do your sort of regular decision. And then UCs and CSUs have a separate application just for them. And they are just one application cycle. So technically they're regular, right? A regular decision application. And they have a hard deadline at the end of November or December.
Okay, so two questions about that. So I understand the binding of early decision in one school, and the benefits are you kind of increase your chances of getting in a little bit because you're kind of interested, especially interested. But the downside is that you don't get any financial aid, right?
Well, you can get financial aid. It depends on the school. So the thing is that whatever financial aid you get from that institution, you have to go with, right? So you can go back to the institution and say, hey, you can always negotiate and talk with financial aid officers to try and make something work. But by and large, you are binding yourself into that acceptance and what that initial financial aid offer is. So it's something you want to be careful about, particularly if you're looking for financial aid.
And then early action, you said maybe you aim for a couple, 4 or 5 schools that they're really interested in. And does that help their chances of getting in because it shows extra interest or not particularly?
It depends on the school. A lot of things about college counseling
Right.
are it depends on the school. But yes, a lot of schools are moving to accept really depends on the school. Some schools accept a good chunk or percentage of their applicants' early decision or
Oh,
early action. It just sort of depends. They like to sort of get early news back because they know the students are really interested in their school.
okay.
So those acceptances, they're more likely to yield. This student is actually more able to come or more likely to come. So part of the game is it's colleges are trying to accept students that they have a feeling are going to actually come to that school. So yes, applying early can increase a student's chances of actually getting in, but it really depends on the school. That's why it's good to go through the early process, get some early news, and then plan to have a regular process as
Right.
well with regular decision.
And then the last question, and I'll let everybody else ask questions.
Okay.
The UC and CSU, we talked about its regular mission, but it's early. Do you hear early from them, or do you not hear early from them?
It takes them as long as it takes them to get back to you. Every
Oh,
campus is a little bit different, just so you know. And some will release faster than others. The UCs go through a lot of applications, and they go through a lot of applications as quickly as they can, but it just simply takes them some time. Yeah,
well, thank you. It was great information. I appreciate it. Thank you.
great.